Hello, everybody, Reggae Boys community. My name's Leroy Smart, and today's show is really a summary of last night's performance. Jamaica nil, Honduras nil in the CONCACAF Nations League. A result which puts Jamaica through to the quarterfinal and Honduras as well, but also leaves a little bit to be desired, especially from a supporter's point of view, because of course people went to the game expecting to see action, fireworks, goals. I mean, look at these eyes, tired. I was up 2 a.m. in the morning UK time, so I saw the same game you guys saw. I just had to work a little bit harder to watch it. But I think first we have to look on the overall objective for McLaren when he first came in. Achieve qualification for the CONCACAF Nations League. Have a look at players with a view to going forward for when the World Cup qualifying matches come along. And he's probably satisfied that he's achieved that objective. It takes two to make a party, or at least minimum of two. And yesterday Honduras didn't come to play. And they're under no obligation to play. They did to us what we did to them when we went to their place. They defended deep. They did all the things which I urged Jamaica, the Reggae Boys, to do when we play away from home against tough opposition. Quiet the crowd, keep yourself in the game, keep it tight, be disciplined, defensively strong, and try and hit the teams on the counter-attack unless they're so weak where you can start to dictate possession. Now, Honduras are a good team. I mean, no doubt about it. They've always been one of the major teams in the Caribbean. They'll always give someone a game. They'll always give teams a hard time. And that's how they proved yesterday. We got the lineup, or we got certainly the major part of the lineup, which I think most supporters would have been happy with. We had McGee again, and Mason Holgate, where everyone were actually correct in assuming he would make his debut. But most people got it wrong. He started in the back four with Ethan Pinnock, and I suspect that's EPL UK centre-half partnership, which I think McLaren may favour going forward. Greg Lee started at wing-back, left-back, as well as Dexter Lambagisa. Surprise may have been Latti and Casey Palmer in midfield, and certainly McGee in the more attacking of the midfield three role. Bobby Reid was not fit, so he didn't take the field. So that midfield was really one which maybe not too many of us would have predicted from the start. And I don't think there was too many surprises up front. I always suspected that Campbell would start along with Antonio and Gray. Now, there's a lot of disappointment in the performance. I would say that it wasn't a poor performance, it was a flat performance. There didn't seem to be any oomph, any tempo, any pace about the game. And I think in the interviews we've seen after the game, the coach has mentioned that as well. There didn't really seem to be any zip, and I'm not into this, the players are tired rubbish. Is it a 2-hour flight from Honduras less? They've had plenty of time to rest. It's just one of them things in football where it just doesn't click on the day. And I think also the fact that we knew that we didn't have to chase a result necessarily. It was more a case of Honduras had to really make sure they didn't lose. And they played that way. They were defensively strong. They were disciplined. They are a skillful team, and they do have very talented midfield players. They're woefully lacking up front, as we've seen. And they will only score goals against very weak opposition. But for all the huffing and puffing and shots from distance and misplaced shots, I don't really think in truth Blake was worried, apart from the save he made near the end. But they weren't really very convincing with their finishing, even though they had more attempts on goal. But I think therein lies the problem we can see with the national team at the moment. We are definitely defensively strong and organised. We have a functional midfield who are strong and know their roles. But I think when it comes to a bit of creativity in the last third, that's where we found wanted, and it's been that way for a little while now. We did try McGee, but we can probably see that he needs to operate in games where there's a little bit more space, games where it's more open. Honduras didn't press us high up the field. In my opinion, when we played in Honduras, we did our pressing higher up the pitch because I think we're more athletic, we're quicker, we're stronger. So we can actually do that much better than they can. They didn't really press us in our own half. They just allowed and waited for us to come into their 45, and then they sort of picked up and pressed and defended there and then fell back into their low block, which was very hard for us to break down. And it's always going to be very hard for us to break down because we don't really have that scheme in midfield, or that person with an eye for a pass, or that person with the technical ability to take the ball forward and engage defenders or midfielders and pull them out of position and create space. We don't have a dynamic midfielder. We don't have that real dynamic playmaker who's actually very quick on the ball. And we saw that against Cuba. Against Cuba, we had the same problem. Cuba had less than 200 passes and less than 20% of the game when we played them, around 20%, 25% of the game when we played them. The majority of the second half and bits of the first half with 10 men, and we still struggle to break them down. So this should be no surprise that we struggle to break down a better side and a team with a full complement of 11. There's going to be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. But I think, as I said, yesterday's show said tiki-taka. Should we expect it? The answer is categorically and conclusively no. We're not good enough yet. We're a work in progress. We are at the blossoming stage, or maybe the seedling stage of development. And I think McLaren understands that. He's going to need a lot more time and a lot more work with this team, and a lot more looking for the right players to fit the system. We know that he wants a possession-based game because everybody is playing a possession-based game. The problem is when everybody's playing a possession-based game, you have to be better than them at playing it. Yeah, everyone's playing it. I've seen Bonaire, I've seen St. Vincent, Martinique. All of these teams play possession base. No keeper is getting the ball and launching it deep into the opposition half. No centre half is getting the ball from the goalkeeper and hitting a long diagonal into the last third of the pitch. Those days have gone. Football now is all about possession and working it from back to front. And if you've got the players to do it, fine. But irrespective of whether teams have got the players to do it or not, they are playing that way. From a coaching perspective, it is easier to set up a team to defend than it is to set up a team to attack. And if you have players who can understand a defensive principle and are disciplined, then they can be hard to break down. Cuba did it against us, even though they probably escaped losing due to inefficient finishing on our part. However, Honduras showed how it should be done. We couldn't break them down. They were disciplined. When we do go past them, when we did get past them, they drew the fouls, or they fouled us, and that's how you work it. But we are always going to find it hard to break down teams with a low block because we just don't have the capability to unlock defenders. We need a dynamic midfielder or several dynamic midfielders with quick movement, cute passes, can take on players, beat them in one-on-one situations. We know we have wingers who can do that, but we really need someone going through the middle. And unfortunately for McGee, if there's no space for him to operate in, or there's no space for him to put a pass through, then he's going to look how he looked yesterday. So I don't think we should give up on him. It's just going to have to be the right games for the right players. Overall, we were defensively sound. All right, we have to understand that a game is not going to be played where the opposition are not going to create chances. Teams are allowed to attack against us. Teams are allowed to have goal attempts against us. We are allowed to make mistakes. Attackers, midfielders will make mistakes. So there doesn't have to be a sackcloth and ashes approach to how come we've allowed them to do this? How come we allow them to do that? Yeah, we're not at the stage yet where we think that teams can't come to the office and get a result. We're not at that stage yet. So we're not as good as we are, but we're not as bad as we are. And we have to bear that in mind. We have a functional team at the moment who are going to grind their way through games. Sometimes they may look good doing it, other times they won't, but it's going to be a pragmatic and efficient style. I watched, was it Haiti against Trinidad yesterday also, and that was a more open game. That was an entertaining game because both teams came to play. Cuba wanted to get a result. Trinidad wanted to get a result because they didn't want to get relegated into the next group stage of the nations grouping. So it was quite an open and entertaining game. And because both teams came to attack, there was a lot of space and a lot of holes. And if you watch even the highlights of the games, there is a lot of space with people running in behind unchallenged with one-on-one attempts on the goalkeeper. Honduras didn't come to play that. Yeah, they're not that silly. They came with the intention of, as we did when we went to Nicaragua and to their place, keep it tight, quieten the crowd, don't concede anything, don't let them get into the game, and then little by little you claw your way into the game. And that's what they did. You know, it was an efficient performance. They would be happy with that performance, going away from home against Jamaica, who are one of the big five in CONCACAF. But as I said before, we're not as good as we think we are, but we're never as bad as we think we are, okay? We maybe didn't need the result, and maybe that played into the player's mind, but it was a flat performance. And we can go through all the little individual bits, which I won't do, as I don't really feel there's plenty of other people doing that and giving player ratings. But from an overall summary, I think we have to look at the long-term picture, right? The long-term picture is 2026, which is 2 years from now. We've got a qualifying campaign to go through. It's nice to see some of the local league players getting minutes and coming to the attention of the coach and his team. But we have to understand that this is a ever-moving process. Players will come and go. There are players I think it's obvious the manager favours. Holgate, I think, was one he always wanted to bring in. And for me, unfortunately, this could be the end of Lowe as a regular starter in the centre-back position. I certainly don't think Holgate is the answer to our midfield problems. But also, I don't think that the answer to our midfield problems is out there. So looking forward, we're going to have to get used to this sort of style. With players who maybe have been unfit, Leon Bailey and whatever, maybe making a change to how we play. Maybe giving us a little bit more of an exciting style, or more exciting than what we've seen. But certainly the performance yesterday, disappointing from a crowd point of view, because of course it was a good turnout. Someone will correct me, stadium looks about half full, maybe 15,000. But I really think, despite what the manager says, I don't really think he gives a damn about entertaining the crowd. That will come depending on the opposition. But if the opposition don't come to play, if the opposition don't come to dance with you, it's no dance. So it was a very, very flat performance. A very flat performance in the first half. Slightly better in the second half with the changes. And certainly the players who came on did lift the tempo a bit. But we've seen that before in teams in the past where the first half, the passing is slow. Players are considering that their pass is too long. They don't want to lose it, so they're over careful. So there's no tempo or rhythm. And then when you're playing against a side who are defending deep in their own half, it then becomes even harder to create something. You've got to go around the sides. And we did try and go around the sides, but we couldn't really get people on the end of crosses. And we created very little, if anything at all. As I said, it was probably only the one shot from Dixon. But what was pleasing was that we took up the tempo when we made the changes, which I think every coach wants to see. Flat performance, you bring on the subs, and the tempo is picked up. But I think certainly from an all-round point of view, we've navigated the group well. We've given ourselves a reputation of being hard to beat, hard to break down. We just now need to work on that attacking middle part of our game, which, as I said before, it's easy to set up a team to defend. It's much harder to now get them progressive and to pass through the phases into the last third and create things. There's a reason why Manchester City don't win every game 10-0 when they dominate games. because it's not that easy. They will eventually win games because you're constantly knocking at the door, but the way they play with the ball constantly being moved and recycled, and players sometimes pulling opposition defenders out of position, we're not good at doing that yet, and I think that's the thing which McLaren has to do a lot of work on. But he's, 2-3 months into a 2-year project, so we have to be patient. The naysayers out there are going to be criticizing him, but I think you have to look at the bigger picture. It's not a short sprint, it's a long distance run, and we've only just started. So my take is, don't be too depressed, don't be too critical. Not a poor performance, a flat performance. You can look at statistics all you want and come to your conclusions on individual players, yes, but keep the clean sheet against a team who didn't really want to give us anything, and we know our deficiencies at the moment. And until those deficiencies are addressed, we're going to have results like this, or we're going to have performances more like this. So once a draw's made, and whether we come up against any one of the big four, this style will be effective, because playing a Mexico or a Panama or Canada, I would expect them to have the same amount of possession or more than what we had today. The possession stats were 60-40. So I'd expect when we play those teams, we'll have 30% possession or 40. But we know that now we can defend in an organised fashion. And hopefully with players coming back fitter, and maybe the coach having a longer training session to implement his methods, especially working the ball through the midfield, rather than get it and it's going towards the wide channels all the time. And if they can't beat their man, then it then falls down, and then we're on the back foot defending our goal, which happened a lot yesterday. So that's my take on the game. Flat, but the overall objective was to win the group or to qualify. We come out there, the 2 games, no injuries, or no major injuries. So all the players can go back to their clubs fit and healthy. We can have a review, look at areas where we have to improve, but also be safe in the fact that we've navigated the group, we're into the quarterfinals, and we go from there. That's the next challenge. So we can then look at that and see what can be overcome. Are there any new players who may join the camp between now and then? We wait and see. But overall, let's take it as it is. We're in the early stages of a long-term development plan, so let's stick with the whole association and the management team. Thank you.